Excellent. So we'll get started here in just a moment. Welcome aboard, everyone. We're going to get started with the disqualification show following the race at Dover here in just a moment. As we wait out the wrap up of the race and it's time for the Oop. All right, let's get this over here. And we'll copy the link. Gonna wait a little bit here while everybody else sorts over. We're going to get the link posted on the Twitter. And we'll be started here in just a moment. Okay. Let's make sure everything's working properly here. All right. Welcome aboard. We got one person in the chat here. Welcome aboard. We're going to get started here. I'm experimenting a little bit with the camera angle. I know I've done it from the side before. We're going to try it from the front here and see what that looks like on camera. And keep trying to move this around a little bit. Also, I think I'm going to try without the headphones here. I'm not sure if that was necessary or not, but we'll make sure the sound levels and everything are where they need to be. So, unofficially, Martin Truex Jr., your winner today at Dover, and unofficially, B.J. McLeod, your last place finisher. An unusual, well, not really an unusual race, really. A very, very calm race towards the end of the stage there, with Truex cruising to the finish. Also, virtually unopposed last place battle, although we had a little bit of an issue there with the number 36 of Matt Tifft. We'll jump into that in a sec. I'm just stalling while I get the race results loaded up here, the unofficial results. So unofficially, yes, B.J. McLeod, your last place finisher after completing 96 laps. There were reports over the radio that they had a blown header on the number 52. Came down pit road on lap in the, I believe it was the 1/4 mark there. Let's see, let me get my notes pulled up. And we'll take a look here. Come on, load up there. There we go. I believe it was lap 104 that the 52 came in, but I want to confirm that for sure in my notes. And there we go. And we have it here. And yes, lap 103, he came down with leaky header. So the story of that there, the start of the race, we had multiple drivers falling to the rear of the field. Reed Sorensen had originally been listed as your last place starter in the number 27 fielded by Premium Motorsports. They had an engine change on that car as well as Ross Chastain, which may have been the reason that both the 27 and the 15 didn't enter a time on in qualifying. But Martin Truex Jr., your winner today, was one of a few other cars that were sent to the back of the field. Matt Tifft as well, and Ryan Preece and Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman, your second place finisher today. Great run for him. We'll get into that a little bit more in the show here today. So we talk about these drivers falling to the rear of the field. 3 times that the number 36 car of Matt Tifft failed inspection. That meant that he had to do a pass-through penalty at the start of the race. He ended up taking the last spot there at the very beginning when the race finally got underway just a few hours ago, and Matt Tifft held the spot there. He lost multiple laps over the next rest of the first stage there. He was 2 laps down by lap 12, 3 down by lap 36, and then he let's see. They said there were some problems under the front end of the car, a serious tight condition, and at one point, as I reported on Twitter there. Tifft reported that he had something that he was smelling in the front of the car, perhaps something dragging or something mechanical. At that point, I didn't really hear much more on the issue because I was switching over the radio to the Quinn Huff car that Tifft actually passed on the track on lap 95. That dropped the number 77 to last. During that point, I was actually kind of looking at statistics about when the number 77 had finished last at Dover, and I didn't get a chance to post this because it changed hands very quickly after that to B.J. McLeod. but I'll go ahead and bring it up here that it was Bobby Hillen on 2 occasions driving the number 77 car. Once both with DK Ulrich was the team owner, and then when Doug Bowell became the team owner, the Jasper Engines machine. And he had finished last on 2 occasions there in the mid 90s. But then that ended up changing hands very quickly after the number 52 went down pit road. They had reports of temperatures that were too high on the car. About 274 degrees was the number that I was given over the radio there. And ended up pulling the car directly into the garage area. Didn't even stop in the pit stall. Pulled into the garage entrance at the entrance of turn 1. Stopped in the garage stall between turns 1 and 2. And they loaded up the car. One thing that was most interesting in that is that the team was actually saying that they had a really good run going. They said that they were actually going to be, they felt that in the long term, if they could outlast some other drivers, they were going to finish in the 25th spot or thereabouts. At the time before they had the issue there, they had already lost about 2 laps and were running not too far beyond that, about the 31st spot. But of course, when everything went haywire there, it ended up causing them to finish last in the race there. So unofficially, that's the last place finisher for today's race. Still waiting out the official results from technical inspection and see what happens. So, yeah, not a lot of people yet in the chat, but that's okay. It's Monday traffic, just like it is for race day. So this is going to be kind of playing it by ear, also, just seeing how much traffic we get in here. Not expecting a whole lot of people coming in, but that's okay. We'll certainly make do, and we're going to still wait for the hour and a half to go by and see what happens in technical inspection. So, got a few other things to cover there. That was the long and short of it there at the back of the field there. Having the last place battle sealed in about the first quarter of the race, not too uncommon for Dover, although there's been other races that we've had where a lot of drivers would finish at least the race, if not under power, then at least multiple laps down at the finish. Let me pull up some other statistics here in the meantime to kind of fill that in. And we'll get, of course, into the Xfinity and the Truck Series races as well. And the battles there. Both of those articles are actually already posted. If you check out lastcar.info right now, for those of you who haven't seen it reported yesterday on Twitter, we have both the Xfinity and the truck articles currently available on the website. And both Norm Benning for the Truck Series race and the Xfinity race with Josh Bilicki, those are both already posted. The Cup article is about 60% done. That'll be posted later tonight. Got a couple other things I'm working on as well. We got a couple of videos I got to record for later today too. So we got a lot of material coming up here, and hope you guys will enjoy that as we get that all together. But whether or not this is going to be a BJ McLeod article or if somebody gets disqualified, that still remains to be seen. And for those of you that missed the race here today, that were out at work and everything, I hope that you enjoy this as we catch up with everything else here in the meantime. While I do pull this up here in the meantime, I do want to announce also that we're not going to do a disqualification show next week for the All-Star race. I've given this some thought over the last couple of weeks, but the tricky part is that that's kind of basically the Thursday of my my long week at work. We got to do we got something a little bit more involved on early Sunday morning on that shift, so I want to make sure I rest up for that. I am planning on still doing the last car coverage for the All-Star race and the Open and everything during that weekend. So at least get the articles up, but in terms of like a show, we're going to take that week off and then pick up again at the Coca-Cola 600. So I apologize for the inconvenience on that, but we're going to piece that again going forward. And that's in a couple weeks, of course. See, my mind's still off right now. That will be in 2 weeks to the All-Star race. Next week for Kansas, we are planning on doing the show then for that Saturday night race there. So look ahead to that. But in 2 weeks for the All-Star race, I'm not planning on doing a show for that, and we'll do the 600 after that. Everything's subject to change, but that's kind of the plan, so going up at the end of this month. Let me look at the other Dover results. I want to kind of check out some other drivers that retired and later in the race here. I think that McLeod's is more or less the average. At least that's what it seemed like from what I was looking at originally. Let me take a look here. And we scroll down. Boop, 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 boop. Excellent. Yeah, I'm seeing a whole lot of finishes where drivers fell out between about the last 50 or 60 laps. Okay, actually, yeah, it does seem to be on the, maybe it's on the higher end of the distribution here. Okay, no, this is interesting. So very similar to what we had at Talladega last fall. We had a situation where there were drivers that were falling out of the race in later parts of the event. So in the on the Cup Series side, statistically, the current record for the most laps completed in a Cup Series race at Dover and still finishing last was Dale Jarrett in 2007. The first car tomorrow race there, actually, the first time Martin Truex Jr. won a race. So it kind of all fits together there. 241 of the 400 laps completed. And then the second highest is actually one of the Bobby Hillin finishes I mentioned earlier. This one on June 1st of 1997 in a 500 lap race, 234 laps completed. That finish actually ended a streak where Jeffrey Bodine was about to get 3 consecutive last place finishes, and or rather his team getting 3 consecutive last place finishes because the week before that, Todd Bodine was driving the number 7 as Jeff had been injured. And Jeff had a last place run. I believe that year was at Sears Point, if I remember correctly, in May. And then Bobby Hill ended that streak. Jeff Bodine finished next to last in the June of 1997 Dover race, but didn't quite get the last place run. Trevor Bayne, just a few years ago in 2015, completed 221 laps, 207 laps completed by Kyle Petty in 2003. And rounding out the top 5 in this group is 192 laps completed by Jamie McMurray in the playoffs race in 2016. And then it goes further down from there. So unofficially, the number of laps completed was at 95 or 96. It's right in that middle of the range there. Yes, 96 laps complete. That currently ties with Morgan Shepherd. Well, Shepherd, again, being a big story from this weekend. And Kyle Busch unofficially matching his record of 11 straight top 10 finishes from the beginning of the 1990 season. Morgan Shepherd completed 96 laps on May 20th, 1984, and finished last in that one. That is the 11th. So it ties Shepherd for the 11th most laps completed by a last place finisher at Dover. And given that this is the 50th anniversary of the race, that really says a lot because you only have so many that had 100 laps or more completed and still finishing last in the race. So interesting set of circumstances there. But the number 36, Matt Tifft, ended up finishing the race multiple laps down, avoided the last place finish there, the number 36, unofficially shown in the 32nd position, 12 laps down. And that avoided what would have been the first last place run for the car number at Dover since Tommy Baldwin's team swept both last place runs in 2010 with Johnny Sauter and Dave Blaney. And that ended up changing hands there. But unofficially, it looks like the only 2 drivers that fell out were McLeod and Huff. I know Sorensen was going behind the wall, or rather on pit road, late in the race there. I don't believe he actually fell out, although he's 43 laps down. He probably fell out at the end of the race, but I don't have anything confirming on that yet. But that's still the story at the moment. Okay, and let me pull up the other results, and we'll go over those as well. And actually, this will be a little bit easier this time around since we have the articles posted from those last couple of races. In addition, we also have another ARCA article coming up from our guest contributor, William Saki, coming up this week. I believe the race over in Nashville. So that's going to be posted on tomorrow. Now that we have the Cup article today, we have his article tomorrow. We have on Thursday the article for the preview for the Kansas weekend. And then we go into the action at Kansas through Saturday. So it's going to be a good week of content coming up. And again, a couple of videos I'm working on. We'll get some more information on when those are announced. Definitely check out the one we did on with John Andretti and the Indy 600 double. That was a really interesting one to cover there. NASCAR man just posting that, I believe, just last week. I'm really happy with how that came out. I love the way he brings in the footage and everything there. So that I felt was really interesting there. Let's see. Looking further back. So let's do this chronologically. We'll go ahead and start with the truck series here. First of all, on this one here, again, I want a big thank you to NASCAR Paint on Twitter for sending the screen grab of Benning's truck from qualifying in there. I didn't have that. I didn't catch that live there, but it's cool to see that they're live streaming the single truck qualifying in the truck series there. So I was able to, so he was able to send that screen cap of that one. So we do have a shot of the number 6 there that's been updated since the article was originally posted. A rare situation there for Norm Benning, finishing last because the truck was listed as too slow for not maintaining minimum speed. It seems like NASCAR has been a little bit more strict about the minimum speed requirement, especially these really faster tracks like Bristol and Dover, where there's not a whole lot of room for people to get out of the way. Um, we'd seen Benning and some of these other teams been flagged off the track before, so it's not necessarily the first time that somebody's been flagged off the track for that reason, certainly not. But in terms of the Truck Series history, the person has not finished last for being flagged off the track as too slow. Only 2 times in occasion. I believe the previous time was Lonnie Richardson in 2004. Yes, July 31st of 2004. This was over at the race in Michigan. Only completed about 8 laps in that race before he was flagged off the track. Richardson, that was actually your, I believe, your champion in that series at one point. I know the number 0 had a lot of finishes with multiple different drivers. And actually, Richardson, yes, did pick up the second of 2 Truck Series championships in the NASCAR series in 2004. Had also been the champion in 2002. Richardson had 4 last place finishes in 2004, including that too slow finish there. So the minimum speed requirement, again, it's interesting to see when it is and is not enforced at these other races. Certainly, it's unfortunate for some of these teams. You know, they get black flag. They try to work on their vehicles and get back out there and do the very best they can. Unfortunately, it's just another one of those situations where you know, the rules are what they are, and you know, you don't want anybody to be in danger of any of the other competitors out there. But of course, you want to give these guys the very most chances you can to actually improve their equipment and get it back out there. I know that's what practice and qualifying are for, but you know, in the race, you know, even the best teams are still making adjustments. Saw plenty of that today in the Cup Series race here, as drivers came and went and further up in the field. But yeah, an unfortunate setback for Norm Benning. It's only a few starts that he's made this year, and it's his first last place finish since Eldora last year, where he had a very good run, actually. The last place finish kind of obscured how good he had looked in that race, but got tangled at the very end of the event and ended up eliminated from the race. And just barely had just taken the last spot in that one. That battle seemed to go just about the entire distance. In spite of what some may say about some of these other drivers being not very competitive or not being very fast, Benning is not really as consistent a feature in the Truck Series last place rankings as it may seem. Although I think that finish is going to bring him a little bit closer to the top of the charts here. Let's take another look at that, where things stand there. So yes, that finish for Benning actually ties him for second in the Truck Series last place rankings. Johnny Chapman is still the current leader in that series with 14. This 13th finish ties Benning with both Wayne Edwards and Caleb Rourke. Rourke being your a very frequent NASCAR feature with Jennifer Jo Cobb's team, and Wayne Edwards, I believe he was driving. Was he driving the number 0 as well? There was a time there where he was not of course Cobb's number 0, but a different team there. Let's take another look at that. So I want to get that correct on here. Okay, no, we got that's driving the number 93 there, 86, 25. Okay, drove the number 0 later on. Maybe about the late 2000s. I believe he was also a past last truck champion here as well, or last car Truck Series champion in the series. Let's take another look at that as well. With just with the number of 14 of them, I imagine a number of them collected in a certain season. Yes, your 2007 NASCAR Truck Series champion, Wayne Edwards, so tied towards the top of the field there. So again, you know, Norm Benning, again, he may be just catching up to the higher up parts of the rankings here, but it's taken this long for him to get up there. He'd been actually competing in the Truck Series for quite a while, but now in the tie for the second spot, but still is not past the current series leader. We've seen some of this with other competitors over the years. Again, we mentioned with Caleb Rourke, but it seemed to plateau after a while. But yeah, Benning as well. I mean, another factor in it has been the challenge of even qualifying for these races. One thing that a link in the Truck Series article there was our feature that we did a couple years ago on him, where he was very much opposed to the 32 trucks field limit in the series, when there's always a lot of trucks being sent home. we still see this on occasion. Certainly in Martinsville, they have very large entry list for that one. And then, of course, the more prolific races at Daytona and Talladega. There's other races like Texas where you don't have as many entrants show up, and often 32 trucks is sometimes too many. But there's still that kind of balance there, and it's unfortunate that he's missed a number of races. There was one this year that I remember in writing the article where he was the only DNQ because another team withdrew, and it didn't shake out too well for him there. Yes, he was a lone non-qualifier in Texas this year, so we finally did have actually 33 entrants in that one, but didn't get to start all of them this time around. All right, race results at NASCAR.com just refreshed, showing engine as the official reason out for BJ McLeod. Although they said a blown header on the number 52 over the radio traffic. And it is showing that Reed Sorensen was out of the race, also with engine issues. And Quinn Huff flagged off the track for too slow. Didn't get so Huff, after the damage that he sustained in the accident in turn 2, ended up being flagged off the track towards the end of the race there, finishing next to last in the rankings. And let's talk about that as well. The too slow category in that we were talking about this already with not maintaining minimum speed. Certainly an issue with some of these tracks. It does seem like it comes up more at these concrete tracks like Bristol and Dover, but of course it could come up anywhere. And although again, I'd actually listen. I've been listening to this other gentleman online that did these articles, these video essays on. I think it's Aiden Millward on YouTube. Very good channel. Definitely check him out. Doing his story time videos about the 107% rule in Formula One and how that's been a restriction to keeping certain teams in there on top of a lot of these other efforts not being able to run and pre-qualifying, all that other complicated stuff. But it's interesting seeing minimum speed and how that's handled in different circuits. I mean, I think in Formula One, the races are so short that I wouldn't think it would be as much of an issue, but then again, they're all road courses. So I guess you have that layer of complexity too. But I want to look up the too slow category and see how often it came up in the Cup Series. We'll look up at the rankings here on the website and pull that up here for you in the meantime, because it's a little bit more common in Cup history, if I remember correctly. Because in the Cup last place rankings, there's some that just say flagged, which I assume is short for flagged off the track, because it seemed to be some of these similar teams that were flagged for being too slow on the track. The reason there, the flagged reason, has shown up 21 times in Cup Series history, but too slow has only shown up 3 times. So it's interesting. I wonder why that changed, or if that was the reason it changed. But that's kind of where things ended up on that. We're going to take another look here at the Cup results, because I want to see which of those examples happened. We very nearly had another one today. It would have been interesting to talk about that if Quinn Huff ended up being your last place finisher today. But let's go ahead and, for the sake of curiosity here, find out some of those other too slow instances. We're going to scroll right down here. Actually, let me just bring the mouse over right here. Just do that. That'll be a little easier. All right. So yes, 3 occasions, and actually okay. This is interesting. So, okay, the first example, October 22nd, 1961, Alan Franklin in his 1959 Nash completed 3 laps at Bristol and was flagged off the track for too slow. So even then, even before the track was, well before the track was concrete, and heck, barely when the track was even on the circuit, you had a driver that was flagged off the track for being too slow. And this, again, after 3 laps. The other 2 examples that have happened for this particular reason out have happened both in the 2004 season, which is a season that maybe some remember as really having a lot of these field fillers and smaller organizations filling out the grid. The first of those at Sears Point, with Tom Hubert driving for Kirk Shelmerdine, had an issue. He was flagged off the track for going too slow after 10 laps. And, after 5 laps. So looking at the second one here. And again, our driver of the day, that's also being featured again, Morgan Shepherd, during the 2004 Southern 500, flagged off the track for being too slow after 10 laps. So it's interesting. So there is a time where too slow was listed on the official results in 1961, before, I believe, any of the ones that showed flagged as the reason out. So let's take a look there again in that group, because I would again categorize these almost the same. when you look at the pages on the website and the reason that these drivers are out, I just take whatever at surface value they say that the reason out is. Of course, you have all these start and park teams, and they say it's a vibration, they say it's transmission, they say it's whatever. There's some examples where they say quit or parked or anything like. Well, parked is different from quit. That's more the officials actually park the team, but it's a different situation from there. The other instances with flagged, that goes back to 1954. So they did do flagged before the first too slow listing in 1961. And there are 21 instances with the flagged there. The most recent example of that being the late James Hilton in 1992 at the spring race at Darlington after completing 7 laps in his number 48 Pontiac. That one seems to have fallen out of favor in the early 90s, although the last 4 examples of it were in the early 90s. And there's a gap back to 1982 before that where they didn't use it. It's interesting. I mean, you hear over the official the radio where they say so and so is out because of mechanical, or so and so is out because of an accident or something like that. It's interesting. Like I'd still like to know the process about, like, okay, who's the person behind the computer that's typing in the actual reason and why they choose one word or another. We'd seen this actually, and this actually is very relevant in the Truck Series results, because we saw. As long as I assume it's still there. Let me make sure it's still there first. Yes. So Brennan Poole finishing 23rd in the race, being listed under the damaged vehicle policy, or DVP. The first instance that I can really remember seeing that since the policy was enacted a couple of years ago. Poole had, of course, sustained damage at the beginning of the race. Could have very easily ended up with the first last place finish for number 30 in Truck Series history. That didn't end up happening. But he did end up wrecking again towards the end of the race, and it doesn't show him out because of a crash. And we've seen instances where a driver has sustained some damage to the car and gone behind the wall, and may have been parked even though they couldn't keep going. Joey Logano's thing at Watkins Glen, the instance we saw with Arc Almirola at Bristol earlier this year, both of those were listed as crash. They weren't listed under the damaged vehicle policy. However, Poole's was listed under this. And when I first saw that, I thought it was a placeholder, like maybe there was a typo or something. But in the official results, it still shows DVP in all caps. It's all in lowercase letters on Racing Reference. So it's interesting. Again, much like the situation between flagged and too slow, we have 2 different categories here for a driver that's eliminated under the damaged vehicle policy. That, okay, it's a crash that forced them to pit road and they went behind the wall. And it is the damaged vehicle policy that meant that they couldn't come back out again. And it's really the reason, well, which is the reason that they would be out, you would think. But it's tracing it back a step further. And it's like, well, why were they on pit road to begin with? Oh, it was because of the crash. Okay, just out with crash. I'd be interested to know why this changed and what it means going forward. Certainly, we haven't had a driver finish last because of it specifically saying this, although Almirola and Logano would certainly be 2 candidates for drivers that would fall under that category. But it could be something interesting going forward. So I'll be interested to see what happens with that. So still waiting for the results here from inspection from Dover. We're again going over the Truck Series results here for those of you just joining in. Taking a look again at the results here. Norm Benning and both Josh Realm also being flagged off the track for being too slow. Again, a situation with the number 34. They seem to have a whole lot of issues on pit road, and ironically, going too fast on pit road. That's always the frustration there. Maybe they had an issue with the tack or something like that going on. Pure speculation on that one, but ended up finishing 31st in that race. Corbin Forrester with an accident ended up finishing in 30th. 29th went to Jesse Little with a track bar issue, and Reed Wilson rounding out the bottom 5 in the Truck Series race. Joe Nemechek, an unfortunate issue with him, suspension issues there, eliminating him, driving the number 8, finishing in the 26th spot further up. And you'll look through the rest of the results here. Again, have to give a shout out again to Ross Chastain for a fantastic run there. Again, running as many of these races as he possibly can. The watermelon truck looked really cool out there, finishing in the 10th position out there, so good for him. And again, being 10th even in stage 2 of the race as well. So staying up there and getting there consistently. Also, really happy with the effort for Hill Motorsports. Tyler Hill this time around taking his turn in the number 56 truck, not only qualifying for the race. Well, in this case, qualifying wasn't an issue because there were 32 trucks with 32 spots, but getting the truck in the race, and apparently he wasn't feeling too well. Tyler was, but he still finished in the 19th position, 3 laps down, and ultimately, getting the truck home. Had a little bit of damage on the nose of the truck as well as on the right side door from the pictures that he posted on the Twitter page there. But now both Tyler and brother Timmy have both qualified the number 56 and gotten their truck into the show. So definitely a good start for those guys, and certainly good to see startup team go. We talked a little bit last week about how Dover has had a lot of bit of these races where a lot of startup teams actually kind of rejoin the circuit and give themselves a shot at it. We've seen Carl Long's team do this in the past before, although they made their debut at Kansas. Some of their early starts there. I think about Jonathan Cohen's team, other efforts like that, but still good to see that going forward. Last week, my tongue was sticking to the top of my mouth. I got to make sure I stay hydrated during these shows, so hopefully this will be a little bit better this week around. Taking a look at our Xfinity, Truck Series results. I want to move on to the Xfinity race here in a little bit. Johnny Sauter, your winner over Brett Moffitt. Very surprising as Moffitt seemed to have a really good run there. Sheldon Creed ended up wrecking after leading 59 laps. But good to have the Truck Series back out there again. They always have interesting stories there at the back of the field. And on that note, I mentioned the withdrawals of the other teams here. It's unfortunate, we talked about Corey Roper in our preview article on Thursday. Excuse me. And the number 04 ended up withdrawing there. They're going to do the full season. Apparently, some sponsorship issues have had them reevaluate what their plans are going forward. So they ended up pulling the number 04 out of the entry list. And I thought they were going to still run Dover, but apparently they pulled out towards the end. We'd already seen both Travis Quapple withdrawn to the Mark Beaver entry, as well as Tony Mrakovich, the number 43. I'm really anxious to see Mrakovich actually qualify for a race here, because I think that would be a fantastic story with the effort that they have and very limited resources trying to make the most of it. Again, our plans looking forward are to cover the Truck Series race in Mosport in August. I'm not sure. I doubt they're probably going to attempt that one. They're probably going to run races that are a bit closer to home. But if they do, it would be fantastic, because I'd love to meet up with these guys and kind of get some stories for you on that. But that's kind of our look going ahead. Excuse me. But still working out the plans on all of that. Let's move ahead to the Xfinity race. Not as competitive as the Truck Series race. I was very impressed by how everybody was fighting those trucks around the field there on Friday. I think they're made for a really interesting show. But the Xfinity Series was a little bit different. Just the cautions for the stages at the beginning of the race, and then some 3 yellows towards the end of it. Oh, thank you, Corey LaJoy fan. Glad you like the Ernie Irvin shirt here. Decided to wear something a little different for today. I figured this front-on view will give a little bit better view of that. Found this on eBay a few years ago, and I think it's a shot from, looks like Charlotte, I think, actually, in that picture there. I guess you can see it on this sleeve here a little bit. It's almost like a bas relief, like a rubber stamp pattern there. So I'm going to try to shake that up a little bit here in these weeks coming ahead here, and bring out some of these other shirts. Maybe I'll even do a video on that going ahead. I think that might be interesting. But yeah, let me go to the Xfinity race here and look again to Josh Bilicki there, finishing in the 38th position. Bilicki, again, this is his first, much like Benning, his first last place finish of the year, first one since last season. Bilicki last year drove for JP Motorsports, driving the number 45 in most of his starts. That team really struggled towards the end of last year, had really difficulties getting cars together. They were, of course, running on the assets from TriStar's former Xfinity Series team. And now going into this year where TriStar is not running in Cup, we're seeing that team continue to scale back. Haven't heard anything new about what's happening with the JP effort. I assume that they're reorganizing things. But again, I don't know if they're open or closed. They certainly haven't attempted any races this year so far. But Bilicki now driving for RSS Racing, taking J.J. Yilley's place as the third driver there, along with Jeff Green and Ryan Sieg. The beginning of the year, Bilicki drove number 38, had some fully funded efforts in just a handful of these races this year. and also some start and park efforts as he'd been swapped into the number 93 and Green in the 38. And Green has now been parking the number 38 when it doesn't have sponsorship. But during all of this, we've seen Ryan Seed continue to be impressive in that number 39. The efforts of these other teams, perhaps getting the funding that they need and some other assets they've been able to acquire on that effort. Sieg was in the bottom five with these other guys at the beginning of the race. Balicki pulling off the track early. Jackson also about to be flagged off the track for being too slow, but was ended up being out of the race because of a vibration. Um, uh, Jeff Green and Morgan Shepherd and Bailey Curry running out your bottom five there. The bottom five filled up very quickly within the first 60 laps of the race. But still seeing Sieg up in the 11th spot there that they had charged back from the many issues they had at the beginning, had a vibration. I believe it was lap 15 of the race, charged back up there and finished in the 11th spot. Brandon Brown continuing to be a big story this year. I know, again, we talked about last week's show about a number of the Cup teams that don't have Xfinity efforts anymore and what that means to be in the top 15 these days. Heck, I say you still got to beat everybody else that's behind you, and there's still only 2 cars fewer than we had last year. So at most, it's improved in 2 spots over what they could have done last year. 13th spot for them is ties their season best at Las Vegas. And on top of that, there's a great showing for the new sponsors that jumped on board: Vector Security, ABS Vans. They had a couple other brands on the back of the car there as well. So good to see Brandon Brown get a good run. Hopefully they can pick that up for the rest of these races later this month. Timmy Hill, again, been a big story. Much like at the last concrete track at Bristol, where he had a good run, the number 66 drove the same former Benny Parsons car, the Toyota Camry out there, finishing in the 16th position, 1 lap down, third car 1 lap down in the running order, just behind Kaz Gralla and Riley Herbst, both from Cup Series efforts, and finishing ahead of teams like Noah Gragson with JR Motorsports, and looking further back to some of the other efforts out there. That is a fantastic run for the 66 team. Again, we talked about Tyler Hill in the Truck Series, Timmy in the Xfinity Series. They're continuing to be a great story this year. And speaking of great stories, Greg Alding, Worldwide Safety Consulting, stepping up to the plate along with other backers, Panini America, and I believe Mane and Tail also jumped on the number 08. They had a completely unsponsored car, flat black. They weren't even going to run the car until Charlotte. But then after finishing second at Talladega, came over to Dover, had a good run out there, went out and got the car into the race. Well, into the race wasn't an issue there. But started 21st, only finished 20th in the race, finished 3 laps down. But during one point, and I was listening to the radio of this on the way back from work, Old Galding was giving the leaders as much as they could handle, trying to hang on to that lead lap. And, really everybody knew that he was there that day. And although that's actually still one of the worst finishes he's had this year, it really says something about how they've progressed this year. The 20th is now kind of a disappointment compared to some of the other top 15 and outside of those finishes that they've had since then. But Galding keeps going, and Brandon Brown still continuing their efforts this year. Looking at the point standings, that still keeps Galding 14th in points, 255 out of the lead, and Brown is 15th in points, only 3 points behind Galding. So it'll be interesting to see if they can stay in the top 16 and make an effort to at least have an outside chance at making the playoffs. So, and that'll be interesting. Certainly when we get to Daytona in July, that'll be one for Galding, I'm sure, to keep an eye out for after that strong run at Talladega. And we see what happens going on from there. But Christopher Bell taking the win, slapping it out of Cole Custer's hands there after he led 155 of the 200 laps. Custer had a fantastic showing there. Seemed like nobody else could touch him. Then Bell gets right up there, leads 44 laps, and takes a checkered flag. Looking at some of the other finishes here, Ross Chastain, again, following up the 10th in the Truck Series with the 12th in the Xfinity Series. We look a little bit further back. Tommy Joe Martin's just on the outside of the top 20. I believe he posted something on Twitter the other day about his pit crew doing some little bit of a strategy there to get him up there. Let me pull up the tweets to make sure I quote it correctly here. He had a new backer from Pod Goats on there on the hood of the number 99. Looks like the sponsor had a lot of fun supporting the team out there, so that was good to see. Let's take another look here. Was it this week or was it last week? I think he had something like this. Tommy Joe Martin saying that he ran the whole race on 3 total sets of tires, 2 of which were 15-lap scuffs. So that really says something there. We'd heard about this with other teams. Jeff Green, I believe, has been running scuffs in a lot of his races. So to hear Tommy Joe Martin's doing that too, again, great underdog competitor out there doing the very best that he can and picking up sponsors along the way, much like we're seeing with Brandon Brown. So another team that has again been a big story this year, and I would definitely include him in that group of stories this year. And yes, yeah, Galding and Brown, yeah, ones to see going forward. Oh, and to answer your question, the Corey LaJoie fan, yeah, I was talking about Johnny Jackson. I was talking about yeah, exactly, the one driver from Scotland there, driving the number 13. He got swapped back into the car this week and finishing next to last in the Xfinity Series race the other day. And we now look at that. I'm going to confirm again. I believe there was a thing where he had come down pit road early. This is okay. That's a Truck Series article. Let me pull back up the Xfinity article and do that. Each following on the next 5 laps. Yeah, Jackson was tagged for speeding, exiting the pits on the way to the garage area, and had fallen back a ways there. So yeah, Jackson falling out of the race towards the early laps. So again, waiting to hear the official word on this. There we go. And I'm just checking this on Twitter here in the meantime. And so, rest of the Xfinity race here. Josh Williams just outside the top 20 in the 22nd spot. Ronnie Bassett Jr. 25th, a little bit off from what both those teams did at well, not both those teams, but rather what Williams' team did at Talladega. And Bassett, from his previous starts on the other tracks there, both he and his brother had some good runs in the number 90 there. Not a terrible run there in 25th, but a little bit off from what both of them had done in the start. Certainly, of course, them starting out, Dover is, I imagine, a really difficult track for people to get their beginnings. You have teams that make their starts out there, but I'm sure for the drivers, it's a little bit of a different story. Looking further back here, Chad Fincham in the 30th spot, and further back from there. It was interesting listening to Morgan Shepherd's radio on there. Again, Shepherd is the kind of the theme of the day, which is good to see. I have no problem talking more about the guy there. I listened to Shepherd's radio during the Saturday race. I put this into the article as well because I thought that was interesting. And where they had called Johnny Jackson's car the 12.5 and not the number 13. I thought at first there was a little bit of a rivalry between the different teams, like maybe they're just making fun or something like that. But it turns out that the spotter kept saying 12.5 over and over on the radio. And it's interesting to see that Shepherd very much has that superstition, I would believe, of the number 13, much like J.D. McDuffie had, where he wouldn't stay in a hotel room that had number 13 on it, or he wouldn't, didn't like to start in the 13th spot or anything like that. But had a very different story on that going ahead. And JD, of course, being a big feature in some of the other stories here. Again, I wanted to extend our sincerest condolences to the family of Wilbur Thomas, who passed away this past week. He was a very big part of making this book come to pass here. And, I was very privileged to go ahead and to speak with him. He and his son, Jimmy, were gracious hosts to us again over at their place over in Broadway outside of Sanford. We visited there in 2017 during the lead up to the Darlington race there, and showed us around the property, showed us the shop that JD started working in, including a little burn where one line of the property went down to the next, that they would back up a flatbed truck and load the car up that way, and just as old school as you can imagine. But a really cool guy. The book wouldn't have been the same without him. Absolutely not. And we had actually visited there twice. The next day that we were out there, Jimmy Bird came by. Jimmy Bird and Wilbur Thomas were really big figures in the first part of JD's career in jumping from the short tracks to NASCAR and helping him make that transition. And that was a tremendous time there. So I'm sorry that he passed, but I'm so glad I got a chance to speak with him there. And I hope that this is again, something that the family can be proud of, and another piece that we can keep with them going forward. Still looking at and that really brings to the other JD related story that came up this week. Was the tweet that I received from Jodan Bailey, another person we interviewed from the book, is the son of the late H.B. Bailey, the time independent campaigner that drove the number 36 Almeida Auto Parts Pontiac for all those years. Bailey was another person that we contacted. He had worked, I believe this was, he worked on Derek Cope's team in 1991 and was there the day of JD's final race. And so very much aware of the life of an owner driver and the struggles that they face. He posted on Twitter just the other day a message about a looks like an old Chevy Monte Carlo that clearly one of JD's former cars. And let me put get the tweet up here. I want to look at the pictures again and see what they had. This ended up getting a little bit more traffic than I thought it would because Dale Jr. expressed interest in it as well. And I really like to. I mean, I imagine he didn't have that many cars even at that time period there, because this is well before the Tom Winkle effort in the late 80s and the investment that they had that allowed him to get at least a couple extra cars. And let me look further back here and pull it up. So I want to again take another look at it there. Again, my reaction on it in reposting it was, yeah, my goodness, where'd you find it? I honestly have no idea. I'd never seen that before at all in any of the research that we did, but apparently some gentleman posted it on Facebook. There we go. I'm just seeing the tweet again here from Jodan Bailey there. The Bailey Excavating's sponsorship on there, and this is and again, Jodan, no relation to the Bailey family, at least that I'm aware of there. The Bailey family up in Michigan, the ones at Bailey Excavating. We did speak with them as well in the research there. Their sponsorship there of the number 70, certainly when they came out to Michigan there. That was John Bailey, Jacob Bailey, and that family over there. They're the ones that currently own actually Old Blue, the truck that JD drove all those years. But yeah, again, this looks like. I mean, could this be the car that he won the pole at Dover with in 1978? It's very possible. I'm seeing it from some of the pictures here. I know that when the car ran at Dover, it didn't have Bailey Excavating on the quarter panels. It was just a plain blue and gold car. But it very well could be. That's the thing I'm most excited about. I don't know how other ways to verify that, but I imagine the number of Monte Carlos around, you could probably count them on one hand or anything that were from his team. I was going to post a link to the tweet here again, so you guys know what I'm talking about. Although I know it got a bit of traffic the other day. We'd be very interested to see, what happens with that there. Of course, there was the downsizing in cars that they had from 1970 in 1981. And when I talked to and now just thinking about it just now, that was one thing that Jimmy Bird was talking about with the downsizing for that time, because he worked both before and after that. That one of their efforts for the smaller teams was literally just to cut the car in half and shrink it back and then re-weld it back together to really get that resizing done there to make sure it fit the correct wheelbase reduction that they had at that time. I don't know if that meant that they actually did it, or if this is one that had, because again, I mean, looking at it here, that looks like a late 70s Monte Carlo to me. It doesn't look like the Grand Prix body that they had in the early 80s there. So it's possible that maybe this was one. Maybe they try to do that in the reductions and then just set this one aside. Another candidate that it could possibly be also is perhaps the Oldsmobile that Jimmy Bird painstakingly crafted together to run in the Busch Clash in 1979 after winning the pole at Dover. From my understanding, that was a different car from the one that he won the pole with. I know that there was some efforts between a lot of the Chevrolet teams that ran the Oldsmobiles back then because they were more aerodynamic and had a bit of an advantage on the super speedways. But again, it's hard to tell from just the skeleton of the car there. But it looks like a Chevrolet part there on the back half of the car. That seems a little bit closer to what I'm seeing there. Let me take another look. I want to take another look at some pictures here of the other part of the car. Let me close this out here and save that. We'll shrink that back down. All Let me see. Looking at the photos here from that. Yeah, the pole in 1979 or 1978, excuse me, and then the run in the Clash in '79. I mean, my goodness. I mean, my mind's just racing on that because I mean, there are so few cars of JDs. I'm sure they're still in existence out there. I know that somebody else posted a while back that red Pontiac that looked like the one that was the last Dover car he ran in 1991 when Kenny Wallace wrecked it on the back straightaway, and it had a whole new front valence on it, which seemed to fit with the pictures that I'd had of that car at that time, where they took the front valence off and it had some serious damage to it, becoming a show car outside of a restaurant down in the south somewhere. Um, you have that, and then you have the accounts of Marty Burke and the car that he ran at Watkins Glen that were part of the book there as well. So there's that one, and then you have this one here now turning up. So now you got three possibly out there. Um, Again, just it's amazing. I know there were people that posted. We talk about the recovery and the reconstruction of the Underbird after Jeff Bodine wrecked it at Dover in 1993, and then fixing that car back up to the way it looked back at Atlanta in 1992. We talk about Wendell Scott's car that he ran his last race at Talladega was wrecked severely. They found that a few years ago and were fixing it up. I think there was somebody else that had found Talmadge Prince's car that he lost his life in at Daytona in one of the last races for the Superbird and the Plymouth, the Roadrunner, and all that other stuff, or the Dodge Daytona. And there have been some efforts to rebuild that. This will be interesting to see. I know Junior has expressed some interest in putting this particular one in his graveyard there too. Be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, I want to. I got to refresh my memory here about what the pattern looks like on the rear of the car at a Chevy versus an Oldsmobile. It's been a little bit of a crash course, if you will, on the understanding what these different cars look like from one year to the next. Let's see. I want to kind of look at the Bailey effort. So yeah, like there's a here. I'll post this. Let's see, is this postable in the chat? Let me do that because I think that would be more interesting when we look at. Is there a way that I may look into this more long term? I haven't done this yet here. A way to kind of show what I'm looking at on the screen. I know there's Twitch streamers and stuff that do the thing with the video games and all that, where they can look at their screen. I might look into doing that further forward. I kind of like just posting stuff on here in the meantime in case I'm looking at something else that's proprietary or whatever else I'm working with. But let me at least do this. Oh, that's right. We put some stuff on Imgur last couple of weeks ago. Let me do that again, and I'll post this on here. New post. And because I have a picture of the Chevrolet that he ran around that time, at least a similar angle to kind of get a look at that. Let me look here. I'm going to pull up this in the meantime. Still in a holding pattern, waiting for the inspection results on Martin Truex's winning car and the possibility if there is going to be any change, or is it going to be only the second BJ McLeod Cup Series article that we've had on the website. He finished last at Pocono last year, the number 51. This time around, driving the number 52, and apparently having an issue under the hood there. Let me see. Where was it? Let me get some interesting pictures here. Because I really do think that's, I mean, my first thought when I saw the pictures of the JD car there was that was the Chevrolet. Let me look at this. Ooh, this is probably pretty spot on. Yeah, here we go. Let me send this one. This will be good. Let me post it, and I want share to the community. Okay, I don't want to do a log on or anything. I just want to load the picture so I can look at it later. Here we go. Let me copy the link. And I'll just post it right here. This looks like, actually, I'm looking at the quarter panel, and it's got the exact same design for the Bailey excavating logo. And this will be good before and after of that. I might actually put this on the Twitter page as well. I'll paste this here. Okay. There we go. Hopefully that link works there for you guys. I'm going to post this on Twitter here in the meantime while I'm thinking about it. I got the post up here. And let's see. Post. And I'll get this pulled up here in the meantime. So, okay, so that does look to be the Chevrolet. I don't believe that's an Oldsmobile. So that would extend the possibility of being, yeah, late 70s, 70, I'd say maybe 77 through 79, or through 80, really, in that sense. I mean, right up to the cutoff there at the beginning of 81. All right. This, let's see, I'm just going to write down here. This will be an incredible find. It makes me wonder. Looks like the same logos on the quarter panels. It would be something if it turned out to be Monster Mile pole winner, or perhaps his final, let's see, from 1978. All right, I'll post it right there. Where did I get this picture from? I think this is just this one I just found online. But yeah, it seems to be the same design there. You see the same. Oh gosh, if they're I think they're hopefully Joe Dan's going to post the Facebook link on there because I'd be interested if there's other pictures that show closer up there. It almost looks like you can see the "With God You're Always a Winner" logo from the ministry that sponsored a lot of JD's cars there, and you can see from that close up the quarter panel that's actually painted on there. Those aren't decals or anything there for the Bailey excavating thing, which is the reason that you can still see the logos on there. Although there's a large circular sticker in that picture that I posted there, maybe that just fell away because you don't really see that on there anymore. But there is another logo. I know Wilder's Nuts and Bolts are one of the associate backers on there and sponsoring that car. Yeah, that would be something else. This is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be interesting. I don't, again, much like we talked about last week with the different teams that we haven't seen the Cup Series this year, or at least attempt to race, with the possibility of them running the GMS Racing number 84 and some of these other cars coming up. A good mystery is always interesting in racing. You're taking care of the allergies here in the meantime. That's stuck in my mustache. Okay. But yeah, so let's see what's happening with that. I just posted that on Twitter there to kind of see if we get some other information. But yeah, but again, I can't imagine that would be too many other cars. I'm sure that's not the Watkins Glen car because it's got the old sheet metal on it and everything. But I mean, it's got, and if it was traced back to a certain wreck, just like the Wendell Scott machine, where they had an accident and then it's traced back very clearly to that the races at Talladega. So we'll see. Let me take another look at the timer here and see where we are standing right now as we juggle a few things here. Taking a look at the timer. Okay, wow, we've really clicked by here. We're about an hour and 12 minutes into the wait for the inspection results here. So perhaps within about the next few minutes or so, we should be expecting any results here from what happened. The technical inspection at Dover. Certainly going to open the floor here again. I mean, the floor is always open, of course, but any questions you guys have about the race today or the racing this weekend? We just did a review, basically, of the other events through the last couple of days here. Again, great showings again for a lot of the underdogs. The Xfinity Series, an unfortunate set of circumstances for the underdogs in the Truck Series, that they getting flagged off the track for not going fast enough, with a rare last place reason out. And then on the Cup Series side, again, BJ McLeod, he was laps down, but he was not in the bottom 5 at the time that he fell out of top 25. I don't think would have been out of the ordinary, given how long the green flag runs were and how many laps down a lot of these other teams were going. It seemed that the cars prepared by Proven Motorsports had a lot of issues out there. The engine changes on the 15 and the 77. Being flagged off the track for too slow for Quinn Huff, and after hitting the wall, 27 having engine issues. I think they probably could have. They were certainly doing better than Cody Ware, and Ware finished 34th there, the last car running under power. It would have been interesting to see how well he could have done. Stenhouse, contact with the wall. He had so few accidents in this race. If he had any kind of problem at all, you weren't going to have a good finish there. And of course, Stenhouse ended up getting bit by that again. Again, and we talked about having problems consistently on the concrete tracks. We saw Stenhouse have a lot of problems at Bristol and ended up having him at the bottom of the field. And that continued again here today. Let's see. Oh, excuse me. I apologize again for constantly going to the tissue here. Oh. Kleenex and Mucinex and Zyrtec, your official sponsors once again for this week's race. Oh goodness, that's not good. Okay, I'm gonna come back up here looking like I've just been shoveling snow. Okay, apologize for that, folks. So yeah, how the race go? It's a different one that we've seen this week. I mean, it was a lot of long green flag runs. Very few people having any mechanical issues. No real accidents other than a couple people with right front tire problems putting them in the wall. Quinn Huff, Denny Hamlin, and as well as gosh, there was a third one. It was on the tip of my tongue. It was Quinn Huff. It was Denny Hamlin. Ricky Stenhouse. That was the other one. So Stenhouse hit the wall there too. Different streak of cars coming there to the finish. But through it all, Martin Truex getting sent to the back of the field for a technical infraction and inspection. Started the back of the field, didn't really get back up towards the lead until the end of stage 2. The Hendrick Motorsports guys seem to be having the best show out there. You had Chase Elliott looking very good after winning the pole position. Alex Bowman staying right with him, as Fox, to their credit, did do a good job of covering that. Also mentioning the fact that Bowman had finished in every single position except victory lane, including all the positions 41 to 43 that don't exist anymore now with the reduction in the field. I think somebody on Reddit had originally done that because somebody had a post a while back saying, tracking down which driver had been coming close to running all the positions but without getting there, and Bowman was up in the running. I can certainly confirm his 43rd and 40th place finishes in the field there. Bowman having a great run, very nearly won stage 2, was coming there to the finish, slid the car a little bit too close up to the track as both Harvick and Truex were chasing him down. Truex squeezed by and won stage 2. And after that point, Truex just set sail. He had a fantastic run out there and had the right pit strategy. Strategy looked like it was trying to turn things around for some of these other competitors, Kyle Busch and Daniel Suarez. Suarez staying out there, hoping for a late caution, the number 41. Caution never came. He had a lap on the entire field within the last 50 laps of the race. Truex got back around him and never looked back. And Truex ended up being your winner by several seconds. A very typical Dover race in a lot of senses there at the finish of the race, but lacking a serious multi-car pileup that we've seen on some of the restarts, more typically in maybe in the playoff races. Yeah, Martin Truex putting on a clinic out here. Actually, if memory serves correctly, I believe he won on a Monday back in 2007 in that race too, when he won his first Cup Series race. So things kind of go full circle there, and him now scoring his second win after winning Richmond and finally breaking through on the short tracks, winning 2 out of the last 3 races. So, yeah, exactly. Only 11 cars on the lead lap, so not a very different, very similar set of circumstances there for your the level of competition there at the back of the field. So, yeah, and then in the back of the field there, BJ McLeod, we talked about him earlier, ended up getting the last place finish of the race. For most of the distance, though, it was Matt Tifft, because at the very beginning, he had to serve the same penalty that Kevin Harvick had at Bristol, where he had a penalty and had to go back up and do a pass-through at the beginning of the race. And doing that. So... but now in the meantime, yeah, again, we're still waiting for the inspection results of the 19. Thought it was interesting that actually doing his burnouts again, much like he did with Furniture Row, and tearing up the left rear quarter panel there right on cue. So how that's going to be handled in inspection, or what if anything is going to be discovered, that'll be something to see. But in the meantime, yes, Truex looking to move himself up the playoff rankings now, one of the past winners. Looking to have a good run up there. All right. Now I'm seeing the post here. Posted, tweeted by Dustin Albino earlier after the race here. Kyle Busch quoted, "This package sucks. No effing question about it. It's terrible. All I can do is bitch about it and fall on deaf ears, and we'll come back with the same thing, the same thing in the fall." Well, Kyle Busch not happy. The same person that's not happy about the car tomorrow when they first came in 2007, but won the race. Not happy, in spite of the fact that he has now tied Morgan Shepherd's streak of top 10 finishes, very nearly lost a lap as Suarez did when the truck came back there. So a deal with that. But yeah, too slow listing for Quinn Huff in the 77. Again, pending the results from inspection there. But yeah, Kyle Busch not happy despite the streak that's been going there. Tad Hugo, seeing your comment there about Jennifer Jo Cobb and Natalie Decker, both of them getting solid finishes there. That's good to see. Certainly, Cobb's effort. We mentioned our last card on infographic last week was showing the couple of times recently that the number 10 team had finished towards the back of the field, finishing last with both Cobb and I believe with Caleb Rourke, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was with a different team there. Looking further back. Whoop, hello, don't need that. Let's take a look here. But yeah, but again, good runs for them. Let's take another look there. Natalie Decker just starting out in the Truck Series this year, had that fiery accident in Daytona. Good to see her get a race with much less going on in it, and hanging on to finish 17th in the race there, like you mentioned. And then, and yes, yeah, Jennifer Jo Cobb, 25th right there. Final car to finish under power. But still coming home with the checkered flag again, ahead of some teams that couldn't quite do it there. We mentioned Jesse Little being so good at some of these races as a part timer. Ended up with the track bar issue in 29th. Shelton Creed gets in that accident on the front straightaway, finishing in the 27th spot and finishing ahead of Joe Nemechek too. So absolutely, good to see as many different competitors having a good run as best as they can. So yeah, certainly a shout out to the both of them there in the competition this weekend. And Dover again, not an easy track for anybody to tackle. A lot of we talk about drivers struggling with tracks like Darlington or at other tracks like that where you have handling and you're really punished for over aggression. Dover is certainly another one that we want to categorize with that. Yeah, Haley Deegan with not a good run there in the K&N East race. I didn't watch those there offhand, but difficult situation there for her. But certainly she's still having some good runs as she's working her way up the rankings. So it'll be very interested to see what happens. Coming back to Sears Point again this year. I don't know. I assume she's going to do the K&N West race. I would think after running the race there at Sonoma last year. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of her competing and continuing to improve as she works her way up the ranks. Let's take another look here. I haven't pulled up Pockers's page here. We go into Kansas next week for the Mother's Day weekend. Let's take another look here. Oh, goodness, yeah. I'm seeing a tweet here that Pockers retweeted about an hour ago. Denny Hamlin not feeling well after the race there. He's being treated by medical staff. Pockers has since tweeted that Hamlin has been treated and released. Or actually, this is a retweet from Dan Gelston from the Associated Press. Hamlin not feeling well. It did seem like they knocked a crush panel out of the car there when he hit the wall after the tire issue there. And maybe some fumes got into the car there. Hamlin just recovering from that. Still not seeing an official word yet on the inspection results, at least not from Pockers's page. We'll certainly keep a close eye on that as the inspection results continue on here. We still have not had a disqualification on the disqualification show. We're heading up to the All-Star break after the Kansas race coming up next week. For those of you just jumping in here, I mentioned this and I completely forgot that the All-Star race is not next week. It's going to be in 2 weeks. We're not going to do a show for the All-Star race, but the plan is to do a show for Kansas. and we're planning on things going from a week by week basis from there. It's going to be a little bit kind of a crazy week at work that time, and I don't want to. I was originally thinking of doing a shorter show after the All-Star race. I may just sit on that and make that part of the 600 and have a longer deal there to cover everything that happens from that. Now, if the race gets rain delayed to Sunday, if the All-Star race gets rain delayed to Sunday, I may still do a show for that one there because that would work a lot easier. But on Saturday, that's gonna be really difficult. So we're gonna do that differently. And again, I mentioned also earlier that I got a couple other videos that are coming out that are going to be posted on YouTube here in the coming weeks. I have another one with NASCAR Man that's coming up, and that's going to be really interesting. I've been chomping at the bit to get to the script. I haven't had a chance to record it yet. I'm hoping to work on that later tonight and get that rolling because that's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And I believe I got a script from another poster here that I'm going to be working on as well. So we'll get a couple more videos here up in the meantime, and stay tuned to those on the channels here in the coming weeks as we head into Kansas. And again, we have another William Saki article coming up this week, his coverage for the ARCA race in Nashville. I just finished editing that and posting it on the site. It's going to be posted on tomorrow. We're going to get the Cup article up today and then his article up tomorrow, and that'll be good there too. Let's take another look here at the time. We just looked at it a second ago. Okay, we are closing right in. We are just a few minutes away from the unofficial time that we would start hearing back on inspection results. So we'll see what happens. What happens on that. And but again, I still haven't received that Facebook link for the picture of the JD car. I tried looking up through a photo search on there, and I wasn't able to find it. Perhaps the person that originally posted it wasn't sure exactly what was happening. Let's see. Just catching some other stuff here in the meantime. Ooh, yeah, Motorsports Business Management posted a picture of Johnny Jackson's car from Dover, so it does confirm that they did run the old Toyota Camry there from 13 as well as the 66. It seemed like that was the case, but yeah, now it's confirmed that they in fact did. And the 35 was a Supra, so they had that. Was a 42 Camry as well? I didn't see any pictures here. I wasn't 100% sure on that one, but yeah. Regardless, though, again, great runs for Timmy Hill. Whatever setup they have in that concrete car that they ran both at Bristol and Dover, I hope they hang on to that because that'll help them out going forward. I think back to Elliott Sadler, and we had a wreck at the All-Star race there. That was supposedly going to be his Dover car. I remember how angry he was that happened because apparently that's a really hard car to set up back then. I'm sure that's similar to that now. It's still as difficult. So that new there. Well, again, the new answer your question, Tad Hugo, about new LASCAR stuff. I'd like to contribute to Whelen Modified stories. Again, I'm open to that. If there's an article you're interested in having put on the website there, I'm certainly open to that. If you'd like, go ahead and send it over to my email at brockbeard@gmail.com. There's again, I've been debating about what to do with the website in terms of additional coverage outside of what I do for the Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck. We mentioned William Saki with his ARCA coverage. He did K&N a bit last year too. We had an offer also for K&N coverage earlier this year as well. I thought again I'd extended the opportunity to just the interest about if people were interested in the website expanding into last place things in other circuits. And I've been resistant to that in a bit. I mean, for one thing, I can't afford to pay staff writers. I mean, everything that I've been working on this has been just paying down the credit card to make sure I could go and cover these other races in the meantime. Of course, also the guidance counselor in my college failed to tell me that being an author isn't really a very profitable profession either, but we're working on that too. But yeah, if anybody's interested in doing in contributing articles, I mean, if you're just looking to get exposure, I know that's what William's been working with here. I'd be certainly open to that. We've had some other one-off articles posted on the website there before. We can work that out. Definitely send it out. I can't guarantee anything, but we can certainly look things over, and if you're interested in sending stuff out, we can take a look at that. Um, and we'll see what happens going forward. But the main focus is like, yeah, the Cup and Xfinity and truck stuff, because that's what we've been able to compile statistics on. I've tried expanding into other circuits before. I tried Formula One even before back in 2012, and I had literally zero traffic from that. So that's one thing I've been very resistant about in terms of expanding the coverage in other circuits. And I think also one thing that really helps is when you have a real good awareness of the circuit and able to, have a lot of interesting information there about other teams. I know Williams done a really good job with that, and the other person that I'd spoken with before had some good coverage in KNN as well. Maybe we'll have additional coverage on there, but again, I don't want to go too fast on that because again, it's still a very small website, still a very small but dedicated readership, and we'll see what happens on there. But yeah, anybody that's interested in contributing articles to the website, definitely send them out. I'm not going to reject that out of hand. If you're interested in sending stuff out, I know that we've been able to again work with William and other people there that have been interested in sending content and doing the videos too. It's been interesting. I've been receiving video scripts and helping people out with those. I'm very, very happy to offer my services on those too. I think that tide can lift all boats. If it can help somebody else's video or somebody's article can help out in my website, it seems like that's a mutually beneficial relationship. And again, I can't really compensate that much for that, but if you're just looking for exposure or you're looking for something like that, I'm certainly open to that. Andrew Hayes, look at your post about single car qualifying. Absolutely. I will admit I haven't watched all of the sessions there. Oh, we are now at the 1 hour and a half marks. We're now at any moment now expecting to hear results back from inspection. But I haven't watched the qualifying for all three series, but very excited to see it come back again. It makes me think back to talking about videos with the starting grids back then. That was the way to cover it, was a way to be able to see each car get their moment out there and that progression and who's going to be faster than somebody else. I think that I wish that they extended it also back to the road courses. I feel like the reason that they're still hanging on to the group qualifying thing is that they think that it's going to get qualifying over much quicker. It does, but at road courses, you still have that interest where you have the field and the one-upmanship from one competitor to another. If you watch road course qualifying on YouTube, and a lot of posters have done this, which has been exciting. It's a lot of good memories from Sonoma in particular. Seeing single car qualifying out there. At Sears Point in particular, there's that drag strip that runs down the middle of the track, basically divides the track in half, because the end of the drag strip is basically the end of what's going to be turn 7 at the new version of the course. They would send cars out there. While another car is out working the track, another person is lining up. And then here's an access road that cuts off halfway through the S's. So the next car is already, by the time the first car goes by through the S's, the next guy is already starting to work through the S's and build up speed. So they get those guys out quicker. I don't think it's really that much of a drop off in time. Even as recently as about 2012, 2013, going to see qualifying out there, they got qualifying done very quickly. And Watkins Glen, the Glen's so much of a bigger track. Excuse me, I'm getting a little congested again. It's very much a different track, but a very large track. But there's still access roads where a driver finishes their lap, pulls off at that access road at the exit of turn 1, and they go back into the paddock because the pit road and the Cup Series garage is going to be back at the top of the hill at the exit of that last corner. So it's much easier to go back that way. Sears Point is something very similar at the exit of turn 1 at that track, where just when you start to go uphill, you can cut off and go into the paddock that way. Of course, the garage area is back over to turn 11, but that's the easiest way to get back in there. Landon Castle, when he broke down and finished last few years ago, he got towed back in there, and we've seen guys go through there. So I think the road courses have a way to get that done. The Roval, is a little bit of a different story. Although I'm sure they could use the current pit road to kind of do something very similar to that, but I still think it'd be more interesting because when you have, again, the thing I've always not liked about the multiple group qualifying format there, not only does it not give each individual driver their moment and that progression of, ooh, this person's fastest and this person's fastest, it just looks like a practice session. And it looks like a really short practice session. And I've seen a lot of frustration from other people in the stands where they don't know what's going on. And it's really difficult. I know that NASCAR is talking about not attracting the casual fans anymore, but even like the hardcore fans aren't really crazy about it because at Sears Point in particular, I believe just last year, there was that issue where you had a lot of drivers sitting in the access road up in turn 7 waiting for their time to go by. So they were basically doing exactly what they were already doing in single car qualifying, sitting on the drag strip waiting for the next person to go by. So I hope that they switch it back out of the road courses. It's unfortunate they haven't done it at Sears Point. So if they do change it, it would be after that weekend. Because I think with the carousel, you really do want to see how each driver tackles that corner and how interesting that would be. I hope that they change it. I'm not confident they will. I don't think that's going to happen, but hopefully that does. Hopefully that's the short term rather than the long term there. That solution. I do see a post on Pockrass's page. Let's hang on here. We may have a call. Let's look. Okay, no, this is a post 4 minutes ago. Truex said it was hard to pass. He got stuck behind Kurt Busch for 25 laps. So much speed in the corners at Dover, knew it would be hard. Kyle Busch can't use what he often has, which is the on-off throttle ability, and able to choose different line. Same with Richmond, but tire wear allowed for more dicing. So, issue there with Pockrass responding to a poster about Kyle Busch's issue versus losing to another Gibbs driver out there with Martin Truex Jr. No call yet, at least from Pockrass's page. Oh, that's right. He was at a wedding this week, wasn't he? So maybe he's not at the track there. Let me check somebody else's account. Of course, it's Monday now, so I don't know if that changes. It's amazing when you have. That's the thing with social media that's interesting is you learn so much more about people's life away from the track or away from work. It almost feels like more of an acquaintance than just somebody you follow online. Let's see. I know those of you looking at my Twitter from this past weekend there, you saw me sitting in traffic there going out to work the other night. That was just bizarre. Had like a little bit of traffic stacking up out there. Let's see. Where is let's see any other calls here. Let me try another one here. Let's try some of the other channels here. I gotta say, I mean, this is the thing I always dread more than anything else is like, going to cover one of these races and then it gets rained out to the next day. I know it's so difficult for the fans, but it's just as difficult for the media members because you gotta, especially if you're flying from out of region and everything and everything there. That's why we got to be very selective in which races we decide to cover here in the meantime. Hey there, Ahatron. Welcome aboard. We've got a few more people in here. We've got 5 people there. That's cool. Good to get as many people we get as possible in here. Not seeing a call here too. So yeah, we're still. That's going to be very interesting. Unless I'm missing it here, let me know anybody in the chat here if I'm missing anything else from the action here. Let me check some of the other people that look like they were there at the speedway. Seems like still a lack of traffic on that. Okay, we got that lapping in the background here. Let's see. I mean, the argument could be said that yeah, you get a good, a good Cup Series, good broadcast there from the group qualifying on TV. I still think it was difficult to do because the cameraman had to jump from one thing to the next, and everything happened so quick that they can't keep up with it either. If you just want to see numbers moving on a board, it's fantastic for that because you're seeing this person jump up and that person. They figured that out, but they never really quite figured out the way to broadcast it correctly, that they would have to jump from this car to that car to that car. As critical as I am of the producers of these broadcasts, I think that must have been an absolute nightmare for them to figure out. It's not as easy as a race where you have everybody's out there and you know that they're all competing for positions and racing for spots and everything. And again, much like a practice, but it's so much shorter. So you have to do it really quickly. You have to stay on top of it. Um, I don't think it was good for TV, and I don't think it was good for the crowds. But agree to disagree on that. I do think single car qualifying is just easier to do, and you can do different angles, and you can be more critical of each driver's lap as they're out there. I think that's the interesting part too. But looking further back, oh yes, yeah, exactly. This is the thing that it certainly came to mind looking at the what happened in the Kentucky Derby the other day. They had a disqualification. Agree to disagree on that. I have to admit, watching that, it did look like he crowded that guy a little bit coming off the corner there. I mean, I don't know what the rules are there. It's a whole different world, a different level of horsepower out there. But if the thing I couldn't help but remember about that was, I thought the whole thing about people getting crowded out was the thing that kept people from winning the Triple Crown for all those years, because they always bring everybody out at the Belmont Stakes and try to, or at the Preakness, or whichever one's the third one, to just crowd somebody off the track there, and that was the thing that happened. I thought it was strange for them to be so critical about it in the first round of the Triple Crown there and do that, but a disqualification. How about that? I mean, wouldn't have even had enough time for the show. They seemed to call it just a few minutes after it actually happened there, and when the crowd's still there. So hey, disqualification ends up becoming a big story in racing in general. So a different thing there. Yeah, but but again, yeah, single car qualifying. Very, very happy to have that back. I think that was it was a worthwhile experiment just to see what it does. I think if you model anything after Formula One, though, you're not really looking for a winning strategy, whether it be the charter system or team caps or anything like that. I'd originally been opposed to or I'd rather encourage the reduction of teams. I thought 5 cars out of one team was unnecessary at Roush, but when they seem to also be struggling to find sponsorship for all those cars. But really, you basically get the same thing with these technical alliances with other teams out there, and Wood Brothers' team basically being another Penske car, and Germain's car basically being another Childress car, and now you have Premium Motorsports basically having 3 or 4 guys out there. Even at the back of the field, you have technical alliances between people that way. Qualifying, back when qualifying drew a crowd. Well, you talk about the 1998 Pepsi 400. You talk about the Brickyard. I mean, talk about you have multiple days of several drivers out there. 1994, and the number of people out there, and Indianapolis being as big of a track as it is. There's been a lot of I can think of qualifying sessions at Sears Point that had decent crowds out there too, and this still being a dedicated group of fans out there for that. I mean, it's another event. It's understood that when you have one driver out there, I mean, just imagine if you did qualifying at the Indy 500 in group qualifying, it would stink. You wouldn't. I mean, it would also be unworkable. You have going for the gun and the 4-lap average and all that other stuff out there. The drama would just be completely eliminated. I'm sure. And speaking of which, I'm really excited to see that they're able to at least get large entry lists of drivers. I mean, at least more than 33. So we're going to have some consequence to who's going to be in and who's going to be bumped out. I'll leave it to the open wheel fans out there to handle that more interestingly, but certainly going to be watching that with greater interest the next couple of weeks. But yeah, no, I'd love to see more traffic in these qualifying sessions and everything, and see what we can get. Seeing another tweet here on this one. Let me make sure again we're not getting any calls here in the meantime. Kind of getting some more traffic here. Good for Kyle Larson to get a good finish out there, at least a finish where nothing terrible happened. I know the last place feature he had at Richmond and the other struggles that he's had earlier this year have not been beneficial there for him. Let's see, taking another look here. I don't think I'm seeing anything else from Pockrace's page here. Still looking here. Boy, yeah, Jimmy Johnson tweeting just 9 minutes ago. Not the day we were looking for. Once we raised the hood post-race, we saw some welds ripped away from the frame on the front clip. So Monster Mile is tough on equipment. Absolutely. My goodness. I mean, for having those struggles there, it seemed like they really had a solid run out there. I mean, not a spectacular one. Ended up finishing further back of the league contenders there, but man, oh man, different set of circumstances there. Oh, excuse me. Let's see. Any other calls here? I'm not seeing anything here. We're well past the margin after the finish of the race here. Let's see, an hour and a half into the show here, and we'll find out if there's anything new happening. Let's see. We're almost getting to that part of the season that always makes things a little bit more exciting. Always waiting for the countdown to Sears Point, especially this year with the old configuration, running the race there again. Talking about even with group qualifying, I think we're going to get an interesting show there, and yeah, still looking ahead to that. Oh, and I think I mentioned this last week's show, but I'm gonna go ahead and mention it again because I got to start preparing for this here too. There is going to be a second BSGN starting grid video done this year, thanks to the donors that joined in our Patreon. We reached our first goal there, even though one was just a 1 month donation. It was certainly more than appreciated, absolutely. And we've reached our first goal there as a result of that. So we're going to do another starting grid video for the Toyota Save Mart 350 in June, and I'm going to figure out a way to get that in there on Saturday after qualifying and get that up there for Sunday. It may be up just a very short time before the race, but we're going to do it that week there. I think it would be interesting, both with the return of the carousel and Darrell Waltrip's last broadcast race. I think that would be an interesting one to do. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do like an opening or anything for it, like some of these other ones, but at least get a good grid going there. I may use a format similar to what we did at Daytona, which would be a lot easier to assemble quicker and produce that there in time. But yes, a second starting grid video coming up later this year, and we'll put that together for the Sonoma Raceway. Again, thank you to those of you in the Patreon there. We're up to, we have I believe 4 members there in the group. Appreciate every last one of you. No matter, even if you can only do like $1 a month, that's absolutely hugely helpful there. And I'm trying to put some more content out there to make it more enticing out there. Again, no matter what dollar level you have on there, you're getting access to all the posts on there. And it's not a paywall on current content or anything that we have there. In addition, it also gives you advanced access to the videos that I've been doing with some of these other people, both Ryan Holman's videos we haven't put in there, but NASCAR Man's videos. There's a series of them that he's been producing this year, and I'm very thankful to be able to be involved in his process there. The next one here is we're going to have that posted in advance when it's ready. I don't want to spoil what that's going to be on, but I think it's going to be a very interesting video there that you'll want to check out. But again, thank you to everyone that's members of the Patreon and those of you that are following on the channel here. Any reason for bypassing the carousel in the late 90s at Sears Point? My understanding was that they felt that there weren't enough passing zones, and which is bizarre because turn 7 at the exit of the carousel is such a tight corner. And this is something I need to figure out too going forward, is if they're going to use the IndyCar configuration of turn 7 where it's straight up, or if they're going to use the part that branches out. Because if you notice, if you watch older races at Sears Point, there's a kink there that goes out, and it's a much wider entrance into turn 7. And there used to be a runoff there, which isn't there now, because now you have the new terraced grandstands in there that have been there since the early 2000s. And I thought that was always a fantastic passing zone, but apparently they weren't happy with that. And maybe they wanted to have more laps of the race. Because back when you had the old configuration, the last time it was only 74 laps. So it was even fewer laps than you would see at Watkins Glen. But at Sears Point now, it's going to be, I believe, I think they said it was going to be 90 laps. They said 85 originally, but I believe they expanded it up to 90 again. That makes me wonder if they're going to use the shorter version of the entrance to the carousel versus the longer one. I haven't received official word on that yet, but that'll be interesting. Yeah, 90 laps. Okay, good. So interesting way to set that out. But yeah, I mean the carousel, it's going to be interesting. It's also going to be tricky. I know when if you watch the '89 broadcast, they bring up all the people that struggled with that corner in particular. Um, there were people that flipped over cars in that corner, and having to bang the dents out and send the cars back out there again. And then of course Mark Martin had that same problem in that first race in turn one. So lots of crazy stuff out there. It's still going to be a little bit different, contrary to all these reports on it, that it was back in the day, because back then there wasn't a separation between the drag strip and the front straightaway. The front straightaway at Sears Point now is a lot narrower, so it's a much slower entrance. What was great about back then, back in '97 and earlier, is that barrier between the drag strip and the front straightaway wasn't there. So you could really throw a car into that first corner and almost diamond it off. That you're aiming right for where this bridge used to be over where the start finish line was, and you would throw the car right at that and then wrench it back into turn one. So turn one was a very high speed corner. I mean, that's why Mark Martin flipped that one year, is you were going into that corner a lot faster. And of course now there's barriers there, like the barrier that Casey Kane hit just a few years ago. It's a much slower entrance to that corner. I think, quite honestly, that makes other parts of the track more interesting to see. I think the turn two is a great place to see it. I think turn seven is a fantastic place to see it. Those are the two places that I always highly recommend for anybody going out there to check out the race. And I do recommend anybody goes, if you're in the area, definitely check it out. And that's what we're looking to cover there again, of course. Yeah, Dale Jarrett got on his side in turn seven. Yep, that's the same corner there. And that was in that runoff area I'm describing that's no longer there. The same runoff that Ricky Rudd shoved Rusty Wallace into in the inaugural race when they were battling for the win out there. It's very different there now. I mean, not worse, but just different. I mean, they paved over that back when they needed the runoff there for exiting the chute, because you were originally going downhill, just basically on a downhill ramp, and then asked to make that right-hand corner back on itself at the Budweiser bottleneck, entering the S's. So you had a different circumstance there. But let's see. Truex just 5 minutes ago posting a tweet here saying Monday's the Monster Mile and showing his celebration there. I don't know if that means he's just received word that the inspection has been complete. I believe we may have it. Pockris has posted his Cup playoff grid for the championship results, so they're at least posting unofficial results. Huge race for Larson, says Pockris, and he jumps 6 spots and back on the good side of the playoff ledger. So Larson jumps back into playoff contention. He's now 6 points above the cut line here, it looks like. And yeah, so we got that. So yeah, 6 points above the cut line. Eric Jones falls to just 3 points above the cut line. Johnson and Austin Dillon on just the outside looking in. Byron, Menard, Stenhouse, and Ty Dillon on the outside. Ty Dillon, again, with those two, it shows the importance of those stage wins. Ty Dillon is now 47 points outside the top 16. So by picking up that one at Bristol and then the other one just recently at Talladega, so it really is helping out the 13 team. Looking again here. Which part of the track was Chad Little on when he made a wrong turn in a race there? Okay, now I'm trying to think back to which one. We're talking Chad Little at Sears Point. Refresh my memory. What year are you thinking of? I'm trying to remember, which car was he running? I know there was that one that Rob Moroso did, the late Rob Moroso, where he had a race in 1990, of course, the year before he passed away. He had a race where he absolutely drove the car in a track where even ESPN didn't know where he ended up. I think it was over the embankment in turn two. I think what happened was it looked like it was behind turn two where they now have the stands, but I think he cut turn two too tight and went down that embankment because he was just completely in the middle of nowhere, and I still don't know exactly where he ended up there. That's the first thing that I think of. Um, yeah, as for Chad Little, I'm not sure the 90, but I think Chad Little. I think of the 19 car he drove for. Yeah, gosh, was that Jim Testa? I think that was. I thought Testa was out of the sport by that point. Um, there was that, and then there was and then I think of the '97 car that he drove for the John Deere car, of course. I don't remember him taking a wrong turn. If you remember more about that beast of metal, let me know. I try to think of there. Ringers and road course teachers. You're not thinking of the one where there's a tangle between Derek Cope and John Krebs. I mean, it was 98 the 9 car, because that was the entrance of the carousel where they locked wheels and they drove off. That was turn 4, I believe that would be in the sequence. There was that one. Because that was a 9 car sponsored by Channel Lock. That could look like one of Little's cars, but that was a different scenario. It might not be what you're thinking of, but um, yeah, it's Sears Point. It's had some treacherous. That one there, it looks like it's in the middle of nowhere because much like that's where I think Moroso's accident was one where he had been basically in the middle of nowhere. It looks like he actually literally drove over an embankment somehow. It's hard to tell how much damage the 20 car had in that accident from the time period. But the tangle between Little see now I'm saying it. Tangle between Derek Cope and John Krebs. It was very lucky there weren't that they sectioned off that area with some chain link. They had a big open spot there, and then some RVs just on the other side of it. Luckily, nobody was any closer to that because when that accident happened, they basically just fell right into that open spot and right up to where the fence was there. John Krebs in particular had a big tangle there that the car just nosed into the ground and just ripped up the dirt there pretty bad, but apparently came out of that okay. This is the other thing too. I also want to bring this up on that. Oh, you have a call in there? Okay, good. I'll finish this thought after we get to here because it looks like we do have a call. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to pull this up here just now. All right, we do have a call 3 minutes ago. Bob Pockris, tech is done and Truex car is good, no issues. It says here. And it says no issues reporters. I don't know if he meant no issues reported or if somebody else told him. But yes, tech is done. So Martin Truex Jr. officially your winner today. And it looks to be that BJ McLeod is officially your last place finisher. So he will be the feature in tonight's NASCAR Cup Series article. Again, the Xfinity and the Truck Series ones here. But the thought I wanted to finish up here on Sears Point. In the meantime, I received word from the track that they're going to do a great throwback thing to celebrate the return of the carousel. They're going to have Richard Childress, Herschel McGriff, and Ernie Irvan at the track. They're going to do like some kind of pre-race deal, like a Q&A session. Hopefully, they're going to have them by the media center and do some stuff there during that weekend. So that's going to be very exciting. Again, Childress, McGriff, and Irvan there. We spoke with Irvan during his last appearance there when he was getting recognized for his celebrations there at the track for his come from behind victory. That'll be interesting to see. But McGriff will be one interesting too because he's had the record for the oldest last place finisher of a Cup Series race until Morgan Shepherd's most recent start at Phoenix, the Cup Series. Well, not his fully most recent, but his most recent last place finish there, driving the number 87 at Phoenix a couple years ago. Yeah, Herschel McGriff still out there, still plugging away. Ran that race, I believe, at age 90 last year. I mean, just absolutely incredible. But yeah, so okay, so we see lug nut issues for Larson and Suarez. Well, hey, that's gosh, even in a good run for Larson, still having a little bit of a setback there. But yeah, Larson and Suarez each had one lug nut not safe or secure. So that's showed again there with them. And that's posted on Let's see. Post on NASCAR's page. Where did they post it? That would be an interesting one. I've used Pocris's before, but perhaps they're posting it here on the deal. But okay, but regardless, it looks like we have wrapped it up here. So again, all right, so we're all set there. So Truex is the winner. McLeod is the last place finisher. Thank you again, everyone, for joining in here for the disqualification show. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up right here. Look forward again to this coming Saturday. It's going to be a short week here as we now get ready for Kansas. We're going to do another show under the lights. It won't be in this room, it'll be at the other headquarters that we did the last time. And we'll cover the action from Kansas as we go into the All-Star race weekend. There's not going to be a show for the All-Star race weekend, as I mentioned earlier. Then we're going to take an off week there for that and then pick back up for the 600 after that. So that's the plan going ahead. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. LastCar.info, the website, LastCar, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, the Patreon page. Thank you again for all your support and for following up here. And look forward to the Cup Series article tonight, Williams article on Tuesday, and our preview article Thursday as we go into the Kansas weekend. So again, thank you for following here, and we will see you next week.